This is the Final Word Daily coming to you from Mumbai. Geoff Lemon and Bharat Sundaresan. We've just been watching the semi-final of the Women's T20 World Cup, India versus Australia. You, Bharat, are going to sum up the entire game in the space of 30 seconds.
Before I do that, can I just tell you how special this Final Word episode is? I'm standing right outside the bedroom that I slept in for 30 years, in the first 30 years of my life. I'm standing right in front of the kitchen where the food I ate for the first 30 years of my life was made. And the guy doing the camera work is the guy who I've known for 30 years of my life. He's the guy who, I call him my first ever friend, and for some reason he stayed my friend. So this is a very special Final World. Welcome to the world of Bharat. And now I'll try to sum this game up in 30 seconds. Australia bat first. Australia look like they're going to score a big total. India keep clawing back, and Beth Mooney gets to a half century. Some lusty blows from Ashley Gardner, and you think Australia might get to 180, but they pull them back again. Meg Lanning takes Renuka Singh for 18 runs in the last over. Australia get to 172. Nobody's chased a higher total or has a higher total as that against Australia in a World Cup, T20 World Cup. India start poorly, lose 3 wickets, you think game over. And Jemima, Rodrigues and Harmanpreet Kaur turn it on. Brilliant partnership, 69 runs in no time. And India Harmanpreet Kaur believes, and then her bat gets stuck in the pitch. She gets run out with India needing 40 of 33 balls. And that's where they lose the plot. A few attempts from Deepti Sharma to take them closer, Sneha Rana as well, but not good enough. Australia, as always, pip India in the semi-final and will play in the final.
They have a way of doing it, don't they? This Australian women's team, the last time they lost a T20 World Cup final was 2016. They've won the last two. They're in the final again. Let's start with, because there are some, let's be honest, there are some not so great parts of this match. Yeah. Let's start with the good, which is that at 3 wickets down in the second innings, you're thinking this is a repeat of the 2020 final. That time Australia made 174. This time they made 172. That time India lost quick wickets early. Shafali Verma was out in the first over. They fell away, were nowhere near it. This time she's out early again, LBW. So is Smriti Mandana, which is even more important, really, in a way. And then Yastika Bhatia's run out after a really bad miscommunication with Jemima Rodrigues, who, if we're honest, again, that was Jemima's fault. She should have honoured the call and didn't. Nonetheless, there's this. At that point, you're thinking it can just disappear for India, but there's this refusal to give in. So after the second wicket falls, when Jemima comes in, her first 2 balls, she smacks for 4. When Harmanpreet comes in after the run-out, her first ball punched through covers off Darcy Brown for 4. And there was this feeling that, okay, so these two are not going to give this away. And the way they counter-attacked, accelerated, set up that innings, got themselves back into that game, got their team back into that game. I mean, that was exciting to see the refusal to give up at that stage.
No, it wasn't even a case of refusing to give up. They went on the counter-attack straight away. Like you said, Jemima scores 2 boundaries of the first 2 balls she faces. And they were scoring at nearly 10 and over for the first 7 or 8 overs. They were nearly there. Big overs of Jess Jonathan, big runs of Talia McGrath. They even went after Megan Schutt in a second spell. And at that point, you knew that this was a different approach from an Indian side. Even going back to that final in 2020, after they lost those early wickets, they kind of held back and they tried to take the game deep. Here, instead, they just went after Australia. And for a brief period, it felt like even this mighty Australian team was rattled, but that's where this Australian team is. Why it's so great, right? For me, they're like these strict parents who you can never get away from. Like, even on a night when you think, you know what, I haven't had too many slip-ups. No, I've played the card pretty well, but there they are waiting at the gate. They know where you've been, and they know you haven't been where you said you will be.
Well, and I mean, Australia didn't bowl well. There were a lot of extras. There were wides, there were no balls. Elise Perry bowled 1 over that went for 14. The no ball, the free hit gets smashed for 4. Georgia Wareham was being taken to. I mean, a little bit rusty still probably on that comeback. But the point where Jemima starts inside out, cover driving her over the top a couple of times in the over. And it really comes down to Darcy Brown. She's the one, you know, she's the young player, but she's not really the baby of the team anymore. She's played enough international cricket now, even at her young age. And she bowls with pace, she bowls with ferocity, but then it's the slower ball bouncer that gets Jemima. It's over her head, and she thinks, I'll just glide that over the wicketkeeper or something like that. She's actually jumping in the air at the time that she gloves the ball through to the keeper. And then in the next over, in Darcie Brown's next over, a couple of dot balls. She hits Deepti Sharma in the ribs, like wins her. They only score a single, a couple more dots. So 1 off 5 for the over. And that's when Risha Ghosh is like, I have to take this on. I have to hit a boundary from the last ball of this over. Darcie Brown puts the pressure on. Risha Ghosh gets out 2 for 18 off 4 overs in a match where just about everybody else went at 8, 9, 10, 14 for Perry off the 1 over. The rest of the scorecard didn't look too great as far as the bowlers were concerned, but it was Darcie Brown, your fellow South Australian, who came through.
Mighty South Aussie Darcie Brown. But you can already see, Jeffrey, for someone so young, she's got that maturity, she's got that composure to play in the big games. There was that clip of her during the innings break where she's standing behind Megan Schutt and mimicking whatever Megan Schutt is doing in trying. The warm-ups, like she is the one man or one person crowd behind Merv Hughes.
Yeah.
And in a big match like this, for her to be in that mind space, and there were a couple of times the camera caught her even on the field when the Harmanpreet Kaur Jemima Rodrigues partnership was going on. She was smiling, she was joking with her statemate Talia McGrath. So there's something about this kid. And 10 over point, they take the break, drinks break, and in that 11th over, for her to have the awareness to pull out that slow bouncer, which they hadn't tried till that point. And Jemima makes the one mistake in that innings. It was a brilliant innings. It was quite the innings. I mean, it would well have been the innings that India would have spoken about for many, many years to come if she had managed to take India home. But that's where Darcie Brown breaks that partnership and that cheap over. After Harmanpreet has got out, Risha Ghosh has hit a few boundaries, and you're like, hang on, can the lower orders come to the party for a change for India? And that over changes the game again. So, I mean, on a day, and that's again, going back to what I said, Australia are just so mighty. Even on a day when all your the illustrious names don't come to, or don't perform at their elite level, someone like Darcie Brown comes and changes the game.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a possibility when Sneh Rana's batting with Deepti Sharma at the end, and Sneh Rana is such a fighter that if she's out there, there's the chance. But eventually the pressure tells, probability goes the way it goes. Wickets fall. Jess Jonathan bowls a really good 19th over, and it means that by the time Ashley Gardner bowls the 20th, she has 16 to defend. It ends up being enough. It looks a little closer than it was with a boundary off the last ball. But look, it shouldn't have been that many. So as good as India were with the bat, they were dreadful in the field, absolutely appalling in the field. I counted 9 different misfields that conceded runs. The very first ball of the match was guided down by Healy to deep third, not stopped on the boundary. 1 became 4. There were ones that became 2s. There were other misfields that went to the boundary. A couple at square leg, the one at cover, and Beth Mooney was able to profit from that. She was able to just steer balls away behind point. And there were catches that went down as well. So a couple behind the stumps, the mis-stumping as well that Risha Ghosh fumbled, and before Ashley Gardner shouldn't have been able to get her bat back around. And the Shafali Verma won the worst of the lot down at long on off Mooney, which, yes, Shafali Verma eventually takes the catch off Mooney, but by that point she's put on another, 16 runs in quick time, which ends up being the difference, really. They could have been chasing 150. Healy struggled to go at more than a run a ball. Meg Lanning was only at a run a ball until the last over of the match, where she gets 2 absolute gifts from Renuka Singh Thakur, who's been so good, but bowls her 2 big full tosses that she's able to just lap for 6 as comfortably as you like. And India really gave away the momentum and the ascendancy in that first innings.
Yeah, I mean, like, more than with the bat or with the ball, it's in the field that you can set the tone in a good way or in a bad way very early on in the game. And when the first ball of the innings gets misfielded the way it was, and there was another misfield in that very first over, like you said, you kind of knew that maybe it was the pressure getting to India, maybe it was the nerves, but even Smriti Mandhana misfielded one, which is very rare to see very early on. Yeah, at the 20 over mark, you could easily say India don't deserve to win this game because they had been so poor in the field. And even the bowling, not just the last over from Renuka Singh Thakur, there were a couple of good overs. Shikha Pandey had a good over in between, but overall they just didn't look right, right from the start. And yeah, I mean, Australia got to 172, they could have easily made 10 or 15 more runs. And the dropped catch, especially of Shefali Verma on the boundary, was kind of summed it up, summed up the whole performance. I'm not going to say that it was a casual drop, but just the way she got into position. And the ball, it happened.
She's reaching out to the side of her body. She's not behind the line of the ball. She's been a poor fielder for the duration of her career so far, which you can understand when she's coming in at 16 years old, but by now she needed to have stepped that up. And why they're putting her in that outfield position as well. That's a fielder you need to hide, but maybe they have a couple too many fielders they need to hide.
I mean, she kind of reminds me a lot of Prithvi Shaw in terms of these are young kids who've so much has been invested into them with regards to their batting that they often don't get to feel. I mean, Prithvi Shaw, I've seen him make 500 runs and then spend a majority of the fielding session in the tent, kind of cooling down after having scored all those runs. I'm pretty sure Shefali is the same, and you could see she struggled. I mean, a couple of misfields where you expect a young cricketer to be on top of the ball, but there were dives when they didn't need to be dives because she wasn't moving quickly to get into position. It was poor, and the drop catch. And Beth Mooney was really had just gotten going, and she hit a few boundaries right after that, and that's where the momentum shifted. Till then, Australia was still scoring at around 7 and over, but the Beth Mooney attack, when she hits the 6 and she hits the 4 just before she gets out, is where the run rate picked up, and then it was set up beautifully for Ash Gardner, Meg Lanning to take it to the next level.
One thing I want to clarify, we're going to hear a lot about how unlucky Harmanpreet Kaur was. She said it herself twice in a post-match interview. Everybody's going to say, oh, they're terrible misfortune. Bat got stuck in the ground. Can I point out that, an over before that, she got dropped twice in 4 balls. She nicked one off Darcie Brown. She nicked one off Jonathan, was it, in the following over. One with the keeper back, one with the keeper up to the stumps, 2 outside edges in 4 balls. That's not that unlucky, if you ask me. I think she had her share of luck, and maybe could have been hustling a bit more for that run instead of just cruising in. Unlucky that the bat gets stuck in that moment, but she'd had a slice of luck earlier, but played really well. There's this pressure on these Indian players as well with the WPL contracts just announced, the price tags on your heads. You have to live up to it, all of the rest of it. One last comment for Beth Mooney, who just does it in big games again and again and again. Like, for me, she's the best player in the Australian team and has been for the last 3 or 4 years, ahead of Healy, ahead of Perry, ahead of Lanning with the bat. Mooney is the one who is the most reliable and does it in the crunch games time and time again. She's done it in Big Bash finals repeatedly. She's done it in World Cup finals, World Cup semi-finals. She just finds a way.
She just finds a way, and you couldn't find a more modest or humble person playing cricket right now, men's or women's cricket. She just has that presence about her in these big matches, doesn't she? She seizes those big moments, and I honestly believe, and I was telling you while we were watching the game as well, I don't think anyone changes gears more fluently and in a better fashion than Beth Mooney, not just in women's cricket but in men's cricket. I mean, just cricket overall. I mean, it's unbelievable how she goes from going at a strike rate of around 110 to suddenly powering through to 140, 150 without even kind of batting an eyelid. You don't even notice it. Maybe a 6 here or a 4 there. A lot of mosquitoes, I'm sorry. That was just sensational batting, and she set the game up for Australia, and she was also really good in the field as well, don't forget. In a game where eventually it came down to margins, India were poor in the field, like we said. Australia was slightly clumsy here and there, but ground fielding, they were just sensational. I know we'll talk about that one particular moment with Elise Perry, but Beth Mooney, there were 3 or 4 saves at point where it could easily have been 2 runs, at times 3 runs. She kept it down to 1, and that's what it came down to.
Final Word Hall of Fame, where we pick out our favourite moment of the day. It's brought to you by Visit Melbourne. The visitmelbourne.com is the website if you want to find out about my hometown and come and hang out there. That's where the MCG is. You might have heard of it. Apparently that's the most visited tourist site for anyone coming from India to Australia is the MCG. I'm reliably informed. It's not as big, is it? It's half the size. Half the size, mate. Put some more seats in there. Put some more seats. Now, I don't think it can be anything else but that Elise Perry save. The amount of ground that she covers And there's been this back and forth about her batting in T20s, whether it's fast enough, whether her bowling's dropped off or whatever. But you've got the best hands in terms of an outfield catcher, and you've got the best coverage. And the way, that lap sweep shot late in the game, going around down to fine leg, and she comes hammering around from deep backward square, the full length dive, and slapped that ball back out of there into oblivion. It bashed it 30 metres back into the field of play, straight to a teammate who relays the throwback. 4 becomes 2. And those are those kind of moments that make the difference in a tight run chase.
Look, I spoke about strict parenting earlier. That was strict parenting to the next level. If I was writing a piece today, that would be my intro. Because Elise Perry not only caught India at the gate, she just then decided to give India one tight slap. And it was almost like, how dare the ball even think of crossing this rope? Because it wasn't, we've seen so many incredible acrobatic dives on the boundary overall in cricket, and women stopping the ball from going over. But this was like a proper slap. Don't even think about it. And the other moment we should talk about is the Shefali Verma.
Well, I just want to say, I'm feeling pretty culturally, broad here, because I saw the replay, and obviously I've been picking up my bits of Hindi, but lip reading Hindi and saying, did she just say bench shot?
It was pretty obvious. If it was obvious to you, it was obvious to everyone. She did say bench shot, but she also said chal bench shot, which is what Elise Perry seemed to be telling the ball as well when she slapped the ball back in. I think chal bench shot. Chal basically means to walk, or chal can mean off you go. And I think when Shefali Verma took that catch, basically she was saying off you go, bench shot.
There we are. That's the Hall of Fame. That's the final word daily. Geoff Lemon, Bharat, Sundaresan. We'll be with you a lot, because here we are and we're shooting things most days. So keep an eye on the feed, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Venki.